Hello, everyone. Hey, welcome to our week 3 session of Photoshop. I am thrilled that you all are here today, and this is one of our funnest weeks in the class. You are going to be learning a really important skill in Photoshop called compositing, which means you'll be able to cut multiple images out of separate photos and then bring them together into your own original composition using something called masks, which are made from selections, which you guys learned about in week 1. So this is, I think, one of the most creative projects in the class. You guys are going to love it. It's also going to be really, really important for your career. Before I get into all that, though, I just want to give you guys all a hand for making it more than halfway through the course. And judging by your week 1 and 2 scores, you should all be giving yourselves a pat on the back because I see lots and lots of A's in the class. Thank you guys so much for being so spectacular about following directions really well and turning your assignments in on time and reaching out with your questions and emailing me, and to everyone who's been coming to our multi-sessions on Tuesdays and Wednesdays for one-on-one help. Thank you so much. And this week is, you're going to be learning a few more tools and skills, and just like we've done with week 1 and 2, you guys are going to want to take notes. That means have a piece of paper by your laptop with a pen and a pencil, and be prepared to write down step by step all of the things that I do, so that then you can refer to your notes when you are doing the assignments on your own, and you can make sure that you follow the directions really well. And the strategy that I would strongly recommend that you use this week is to watch this class session today, then get started on your assignment tomorrow, following your notes, and then come to my multi-session either on Tuesday or Wednesday for one-on-one help so that you can know exactly what you need to do in order to make sure that your project is going to get you an A, because you guys have done such a great job of getting such good scores during week 1 and 2, and I just want to make sure that you keep the A that you have and carry that through week 3 and week 4. And then you'll be all done at the class. Now, really, really important, coming up in week 4 is that's our hard deadline. So Saturday, midnight Mountain Time, week 4, that is when you will no longer have access to the class. So it's really, really, really super important that you get your assignment, especially in week 4, get your assignment turned in early, because your final assignment is worth, I think, 185 points. And if for whatever reason something happens, you have a technical difficulty, you have a personal difficulty that prevents you from turning your assignment on time, you will lose out on 185 points, and that is the difference between an A and a C. Or if you have a B, that means your B will drop down to a D. And that is no good, right? You want to, this is your first design class. This is, this is what you're going to school for. So you don't want your first design class to be a B or a C. You want your first design class to be an A. So you want to do whatever you can to get your week 4 assignments turned in on time. Now, everyone here, it looks like, has been doing pretty good. So thank you. But for anyone who's watching this recording and maybe you're worried about your grade, maybe you messed up on an assignment and you didn't get the grade that you wanted to get, guess what? I am more than happy to allow you to resubmit your assignment so that you can bring your score up. And usually the reason why a student gets a low grade on an assignment or misses a few points, it's not because you are a failure at design. It's not because you're not artistic. It's usually just because directions weren't followed. maybe you didn't pay enough attention to the rubric and you didn't see that, oh, you had to turn in a JPEG. You accidentally turned in a PSD file when you had to actually turn in a JPEG. Or maybe you accidentally didn't use all 3 of the shape layers that you were supposed to use on your week 1 assignment. Or maybe you didn't use the correct tools for the week 2 assignment. Whatever it is, I'm more than happy to help you get your grade brought up. So if you want to resubmit an assignment that you didn't get a good grade on, by all means, feel free to do that. Just please do email me first. Let me know that that's what you're going to be doing. And then when you do submit your assignment, email me again and let me know that you submitted it so that I can make sure that you get your score bumped up. Now, before I get into this assignment this week, does anyone have any questions or need one-on-one help with anything? Anyone confused about anything last week and you need a little clarification on something, or you got stuck on something and you want me to walk you through how to do it? Anyone? Okay, cool. And so you have some internet issues. And that's something that, yeah, it's important to talk about that. So for any of you who might have internet connection issues while either watching this class recording or watching the session live, I would recommend that you, once the recording is posted on YouTube, download the YouTube video and save the YouTube video onto your computer. And that way you can then watch the class session whenever you want, offline, and you don't have to be connected to the internet. There is this service called Save From. Let me go ahead and take you to Save From. So if you go to, I believe it's called en.savefrom.net, there you go. This is this website that you can go to, and what you do is you just copy and paste the YouTube URL from the classroom here into the space here. So, you know, we would go to the live session link here, scroll down to, let's say, you know, you're trying to watch the week 2 class session, but your internet connection is kind of faulty. So you copy that link, you go to savefrom.net, and you paste it. Of course, we get rid of this little guy here. And then wait a little bit. And then after it thinks things through, there will be a link that shows up where you can then click on it and download the video. And so you'll have the video stored on your laptop computer forever. There it is. So then all you have to do is click on this link here that says download video in browser, and then you'll be able to save it to your computer. So that's savefrom.net, and it's super handy. So we are more than halfway done with the class. And I just have a little tip for you all. Be like Beyonce. Beyonce carries her laptop around with her everywhere because she is constantly working. And that is why, one of the reasons why she is so successful. And so whenever you go somewhere, maybe you're going to work, maybe you have to go out of town to take care of some business, take your laptop with you so that no matter what happens, you can get your assignments turned in on time. And as long as you have your laptop, you will be good, because there are fast food restaurants that have free Wi-Fi. You can go into like any Taco Bell or McDonald's or Starbucks, and you can use their free Wi-Fi to get your assignments uploaded. So as long as you're like Beyonce and you carry your laptop with you everywhere, you will never be in a situation where you're like, oh no, I left my laptop at home and I got stuck out of town and now I can't do my assignment. You will always be able to do your assignment and get that turned in on time, okay? So be like Beyonce. This week we're talking about masking, and masking is a way that we can cut out images and then composite them together. And there's a whole bunch of different techniques for masking. We are not going to go over all of them in class today. Mostly we're going to talk about our kind of beginning level masking techniques, which include the marquee tools, the lasso tools, the quick selection tool, which we've kind of talked about already. We could use the shape tools and the quick mask and a little bit of the pen tool. When you continue on in the program and take our intermediate Photoshop class, which is DES104, or our advanced Photoshop class, which is DES104, you'll learn about these more advanced masking techniques, including the clipping mask, or the channel pull. We'll learn some clipping mask and color range selector. But these are kind of the ones that we're going to be talking about today. Let's venture into the classroom and talk about what's due. So you want to make sure that you turn in your discussion board post by Wednesday, and make sure that you follow the APA formatting. And what we're doing is we're talking about non-destructive editing. And non-destructive editing is the professional way to work in Photoshop, which means we don't delete pixels ever. We don't merge things. We don't erase. We don't put multiple things on the same layer. The way that we work non-destructively in Photoshop is by making every single change on a separate layer. And if we want to hide a part of a layer, instead of erasing it, we use a layer mask, which is something we're going to go deep and learn today. And if we want to make color adjustments, we use adjustment layers. And we never merge. That way, 2 weeks from now, 2 months from now, if your editor or your art director comes to you and says, you know what, we want to make a change to that project, you'll be able to easily move those separate pieces around, make those changes, change the color of an object, and you'll be able to do that in 2 seconds rather than having to start the whole project over again. And so you're going to look at these 2 graphic designers who work at this company, and you're going to look at their layers, and you have to decide which of these 2 designers works the most non-destructively. And then you're going to talk about why their technique is more effective and non-destructive, and then why the other technique is not very effective and rather destructive. And you want to always cite your reasons using outside research. So you can go online, do searches for non-destructive editing to find a good definition of non-destructive editing. You can find interviews with other graphic designers that talk about maybe some things that have come up in their workflow when they're doing projects for clients, and you can maybe pull some quotes about how clients and art directors and editors often want changes made to a project, and you can cite those quotes as reasons for why non-destructive editing is really important. And as always, before you submit your discussion post this week, do check out the benchmark examples by clicking on these little links here. You'll see examples of discussion board posts that have been made by students in this class. And you'll be able to see an example of A quality work. And you can use that as inspiration for your own discussion board post this week. Okay, so that's your discussion board post. Make sure that you make your initial post by Wednesday, and your 2 response posts by Saturday. and make sure that you meet the word count requirements and the APA formatting requirements so that you can earn full credit. And if you have any questions about APA formatting, you can definitely head to our online writing center. Okay, for image composite, this is going to be fun, you guys. You have all of these different images to choose from here. So you're going to choose one of these little animals here. I'll download one. You're going to choose a hat. So I chose that little capybara that was facing sideways. So I'm going to choose, there you go. I'm going to choose this little hat that's kind of facing sideways. That way it matches. And then you're going to put that animal and that hat with a prop. So you get to choose one of these props here. And then a background. So you get to choose one of these backgrounds. And you're going to put them all together on a new project. And pay attention to the size, you guys. It says 7 inches by 5 inches, 72 DPI. Okay, so you're going to make that canvas first, and then you're going to place all of these different photo elements onto the canvas. Then you're going to scroll down, take a look at the rubric. This is really important. So unlike our week 1 and our week 2 assignments, you're not submitting JPEGs, you are submitting PSDs, okay? Because I need to be able to see all of your layers. So make a note of that. And you'll notice down here in the rubric, you're gonna get full credit if you name your file correctly and you submit that PSD. And that's why it's really important to make your document 5 inches by 7 inches, 72 resolution. Because if you make it larger, if you make it 300 resolution or 15 by 17 or something silly like that, it's going to be a large file as a PSD, and it's going to take a lot of time to upload, or you could risk it not uploading at all because it times out. So you want to make sure that you make your file size nice and small. You're going to get full credits for craftsmanship if you composite all 4 of those images together using the appropriate masking technique. So we're looking for 4 images. We're looking for, when I see that PSD, I want to see that black and white mask next to each layer. And we want that masking to be clean and neat, right, and professional looking. Now, the other part of the rubric is completion. So you want to make sure you follow all these steps. You want to make sure that your document is 5 inches by 7 inches, 72 resolution. Be sure to write this down, guys. This is really important. This could easily be overlooked. You want to make sure that you use all 4 required elements: an animal, a hat, a prop, and a background. And you want to make sure that you mask each one. And you use, this is number 4 here, you use your appropriate adjustment layers and blending modes to make it all match. We want to see that lighting, that shading, and that coloring to all match. Okay, and I'll walk you through step by step how to do this. And then we also have an assessment this week, which is a quiz. And you guys don't have to study for this quiz. This is something called a didactic quiz, which means that you're going to look at each question. You're going to be given some written content that explains a tool in Photoshop. And then you're going to answer the quiz question based on what you just read. It should take you, there is no time limit. It should take you about an hour at the most. And like I said, it's a quiz you don't need to study for, but just make sure you give yourself an hour to be able to read through all the content and answer the questions appropriately. And look, multiple attempts are allowed. So you can continue to take the quiz multiple times until you get it right. Isn't that cool? So there's no reason anyone should get a low score on that quiz. Okay, let's take a look at a sample project from week 3, from our week 3 assignment. Let me go to my desktop. That's annoying. Hold on. We'll use this guy. Okay, so here is an example of this week 3 assignment. We have our little animal, we have a prop, and he's on a background. And the way that I made this project was by going I made the background first, or I made the canvas first, and then I brought in the background, which is this stage picture. Then I brought in the capybara, but he wasn't already cut out like that. He came in on a picture, right? So I had to file, place embedded to bring in that picture. Then I also brought in a hat, but the hat wasn't cut out either. So I had to cut out the hat. So that's how the hat originally looked. And then that's how the prop originally looked. So they were all separate pieces. And then after bringing them into the document, I made a mask on each one. And a mask is a selection. And then you click the layer mask icon to turn it into a mask. And then everything that is black on that layer mask will be hidden, and everything that's white is still there. It's like a temporary eraser. Next, I added some shading. So I added a little shadow underneath him. Added a little hue saturation on a clipping mask to change the hat color. A little hue saturation on the box to change the color. Added a little gradient to create a vignette that darkened the corners. Added a little photo filter to give it an old-timey look, and another little hue saturation adjustment. Now let's start this project from scratch. So first step is we have to make a document that's the correct size. We're going to do that by going to File, New, and for our size, we're going to select inches, and we're going to make the width 7 and the height 5, and the resolution is going to be 72. Any questions so far? And if I were taking notes, I would recommend writing down step 1, File, New, and then I'd write down the size, 7 inches, and I would circle inches, make sure it's inches, not pixels. Inches, not pixels. 7 inches by 5 inches, 72 resolution. Now there's my document. That's what it looks like at 100%. We are more than welcome to zoom in closer, so I'm going to hit Command +, just so it's a little bit easier to work with. And now we can start placing our images into the document. And by the way, that's a shortcut key that you want to write down if you don't have it written down already. Command +, or if you're on a PC, it's going to be Control +. So I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and I'll start with the background. Now, see here how I brought in this background, but the white sides of my document are showing. What would happen if I just stretched this background picture from here to here and then from here to here? Would not be a good idea, would it? No, do not do this. Do not resize from the edges. Watch what happens. Don't do this. Do not do this. Please don't do this. The image looks very stretched and it looks bad. The circles in the background are now like ellipses, ovals. So I'm going to go up to the top of the screen and make sure the width and the height always maintain the exact same percentage. So I'm going to change my width back to 21.43. So this means we are viewing this background image at about 21% of its normal size. Now I want to resize it so it fills in the whole background of my canvas. But I don't want the height and width to change. I want them to maintain the same numbers so they don't look squished. So what I'm going to do is hold down the Shift button. This is really important, guys. Hold down the Shift button. Now I'm going to hover my cursor on the corner of this image, and I'm going to drag at a diagonal upward angle. Now I'm going to do the same for the other side. I'm going to hold down the Shift button and click at a diagonal downward angle on the edge, not the corner, the edge. Now let's go up to the top of the screen and look at the width and the height. The width says 31.55 and the height says 31.55. Both numbers are exactly the same. That means we did it right. That means we resized correctly. And now all we have to do is hit Enter or Return. So what's really important when you're resizing your images, always make sure the width and the height stay exactly the same. Let's do that again. I hit the Delete button to delete my background. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. Write this down, guys. File. You can write in your notes like a little arrow. File, arrow, Place Embedded, background, place. Step 2, hold down the Shift button, click and drag upward at a diagonal angle from the corner. Hold down the Shift button, click downward at a diagonal angle from the corner. Go up to the top of the screen and make sure the width and the height have maintained the exact same percentage. If you accidentally did something like this and changed that width and height number, so right now my width says 31.37 and my height says 31.49, change the numbers so the width and the height are exactly the same numbers. And then when you're all done, hit Enter or Return. Enter or Return. So File, Place Embedded, hold down the Shift button to resize, check the sizes at the top of the screen, and then hit Enter or Return to place. Now I'm going to bring in the next part, File, Place Embedded, now we can shrink him down a little bit, can't we? And we can do that by holding down the Shift button, clicking on the corner, not the edge, the corner, dragging downward at a diagonal angle. And now I want to move this guy around. I don't want him off to the side like this. So I'm not going to click directly on the image. Don't click directly in the center of the image. Click kind of off to the edge a little bit. And now I can click and I can move this around. So don't click exactly on the center. Click kind of on the edge here. And drag, click and drag and move around. And now I'm going to hit Enter or Return. And oh, you know what I didn't do? I didn't check my sizes up at the top of the screen. So you can hit Command T, write that down, guys, Command T to bring up the transform controls, and then check your sizes at the top of the screen. See, my width says 23.53 and my height says 23.50. I'm going to change the height to 23.53. And now hit enter or return. Now I'm going to go to File. Oh, now I'm done. So I'm going to hit enter or return. Now I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. File, Place Embedded. Write that down if you don't have it written down already. I'm going to click on the hat. I'm going to hit Place. Now I'm going to hold down the Shift button. Click and drag at the corner to shrink this down. Now I want to move this hat into place. So I'm going to click not in the middle, but I'm going to click slightly off to the side and move this to about where I think it should go. Now I'm going to check my sizes up at the top of the screen. I guess I slightly let go of the Shift button. So my width says 15.96 and my height says 15.99. So I'm just going to change the height to 15.96. And now I'm going to hit enter or return. Now I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. I'm going to click on the prop. I'm going to hit Place. Now right now the prop is pointing at an angle that is not going to look good with my composition. I'm going to hold down the Shift button, click and drag. It would end up being much better if the prop were facing the opposite direction. I'm going to hit enter or return. And now I'm going to go up to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Write this down, guys. Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Write this in your notes. Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. And what this is going to do is flip that prop around so it's pointing a direction that's going to look good with my composition. Now I want to move this prop around, so I can either use the Move tool, which is this little arrow up at the very, very top of the tool panel, or I can use a shortcut key, which is the letter V, not Command V, just the letter V by itself. And I can click and I can drag and I can move this into place like so. Alrighty, so we have all of our different elements here. Now what we have to do is learn about how to make selections and masks so that we can cut these different elements out of their backgrounds. Let's go over the different ways to do this on another document really quick. File, New. And on this new document, we'll just play around with a very simple image first. I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. Same way we always bring something in. And I'm going to hit enter or return. So I want to cut this flower out of its background. And there are a couple of different ways to do this. Let's go over, and I'll just go through all of the different selection techniques that we can use for this project. The first, I'll start with the easiest selection technique, which is the marquee tools. And the marquee tools all live together on the same button. The rectangle marquee tool, the elliptical marquee tool, and the single row marquee tool, all friends together. So we're going to use the elliptical marquee tool. And I'm going to hold down the Shift button, click and drag at a diagonal angle. And what I'm drawing here now is a perfect circle. So if I were to apply a layer mask to this perfect circle, watch what happens. So after making a selection, I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click the Add a Layer Mask icon, which looks like a square with a circle inside of it. And ta-da, everything that is outside that circle has been cut away. And this is how the layer mask works. It's kind of like a stencil. I'm going to go and click on this layer mask, this is the black and white shape that has appeared in my layer panel. I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button on my keyboard. Alt if you're on a PC, Option if you're on a Mac. And I'm going to click on that black and white shape, and that is what the layer mask looks like. Everything that is black is hidden away, and everything that is white is still there. And the advantage of having this layer mask instead of erasing is that if anything got cut away that you actually didn't want to cut away, you can bring it back simply by painting. Watch. I'm going to get my brush tool out. And I want to make sure that black and white are my foreground and background colors. So I'm going to hit the letter D on my keyboard. Write this down, guys. D equals default. So D resets your foreground and background colors to their pure black and to pure white. And now watch what happens. Every time I paint with white on my layer mask, and I know I'm painting on my layer mask because it's selected and it has this white bracket around it. So you can just click on your layer mask to make sure that it's selected. Watch. Every time I paint with a white paintbrush, it's bringing back what I erased. Okay? And right now it looks kind of soft and glowy. But if I want to get more accurate, I can increase the hardness of my brush. And I can paint with a little hardness. Right, and I can get something like this. Now, as you can see as I'm painting, because I'm only painting with my finger, so it's not very accurate. If I want to fix and clean up my edges, all I have to do is hit X on my keyboard and watch. X means that my foreground and background color has switched, and now I'm painting with black, and every time I paint with black, I'm erasing. Every time I'm painting with black, I'm erasing. Remember the bracket keys to increase and decrease the size of your brush. And of course, you guys will have more time to work on it, but that is basically how layer masks work. Everything that is black gets painted away and hidden and erased, and everything that is white is still there. See? All right, so the marquee tools obviously will only make either circular selections or rectangular selections. Command D to deselect. If you no longer want the selection, Command D. But you can continue to adjust your marquee selection by using the Mask's Properties window. Watch this. So, made a circular selection. I'm going to click on the square with a circle inside of it. Now watch what happens when I double click on the layer mask icon in the layer panel. This brings up the Mask's Properties window. And so if I want to feather and soften the edge of my mask, I can increase the feathering here, and watch, now it's blended, right? And so you can kind of create a blended look like this. Pretty cool, right? Okay, now let's say we want to make different shapes for our selections. We are going to play with the lasso tools next. Now, the regular free form lasso is only going to be as steady as our finger is steady. So watch as I trace around the edge of this flower. It's not very good because I'm just using the trackpad on my laptop, which is what you guys all have. And I'm kind of trying to trace this flower, but with my finger is not very steady. So I'm making a very jagged edge and it's not looking good. Now watch what happens when I turn this selection into a layer mask by going down to the bottom of the layer panel and clicking on the square with the circle inside of it. Not a very clean looking edge, is it? So using your standard lasso tool is probably not the ideal tool for this particular subject. To get rid of this layer mask, I'm going to hold down the control button, click on the layer mask itself, and then click delete layer mask. There is another there's another lasso tool called the magnetic lasso tool, which also is not terribly recommended. I think they put it here for hobbyists who want to kind of quickly make memes and things for social media, and they don't really care about making something look good. So with the magnetic lasso tool, it's easy to use in that it's going to click to the edge of the object that you're trying to select. But it's not going to look good. And let me show you how it's not going to look good. It's going to leave a very jagged, pixelated edge. It's going to require a lot of refinement in order to look halfway decent and ready for print. This is why I would recommend you not use the magnetic lasso tool for any sort of professional Photoshop work. Now I'm going to go down and click on the layer mask icon. See how the edges are kind of jagged? See how you can see some of the background still showing through? That's why the magnetic lasso tool is not really a great tool to use. The polygon lasso tool is great for objects that have straight edges only. Not going to be appropriate for this flower because this flower has smooth curves. But if you were to have a box that you needed to cut out, or like the magic wand that we have this week, the polygon lasso tool is going to be great for this. So the polygon lasso tool can only make straight edges. Let's see what this looks like. Ta-da, polygon lasso tool. Oh, by the way, I'm using Command D to deselect. Now the quick selection tool, it's really handy, but the edges that it makes are also kind of like the magnetic lasso tool, and that it sometimes can get kind of jagged. So many of you use the quick selection tool for the headscarf assessment, and you guys did great. But you know, it takes some care. And yes, Chelsea, I've been demonstrating your assignment for week 3. So with the quick selection tool, it will quickly select an area based on its color. And then if you go too far, and if you want to kind of refine your edge, you can click the minus sign next to the brush, which is the subtract from selection icon. And then you can kind of refine your edge this way. So if you went too far in any places, you can easily erase, erase, erase. Then after you've made your selection with the quick selection tool, you can go to this square with the circle inside of it. And see, the problem is you get that very jagged looking edge, which if you were to turn something in like this, would not look good. Now, there are ways to refine and fix this jagged edge. If you double click on the layer mask icon, you can click on the link here, the button that says mask edge. And then you can increase the smoothness, increase the contrast, and then shift the edge. And that helps a little bit, but you can see I'm still getting some background in there. So the best strategy is to use the correct selection tool so that you don't have to go in and fix things later. And so for this particular flower, I would recommend using the pen tool, since this flower has smooth curves and straight lines. And the pen tool is located above your letter T on your tool panel. And you have either the freeform pen tool or the standard pen tool. I would recommend using the standard pen tool. And up at the top of the screen, just like we learned in week 1, you have 3 options in the drop-down menu up at the top of the screen. You have shape, path, and pixels. I would recommend using path. And I would also recommend staying inside the line of the subject. And to make a path with the pen tool, you're not clicking and dragging like you would with a brush tool. You're clicking on 2 points, and then when you click on the second point, you drag and you pull out these things called anchors. Click and drag. And these anchors create the Bezier curve to create that smooth line. And the best way to do it is just to drag the anchors along with the edge that you're tracing. And see, these anchors help to, they're like magnets, and they help to create the curve. So it's click and drag. And there's a game called the Bezier game, which is a great game to practice the pen tool. And the pen tool is kind of scary because, you know, it takes some getting used to. You're not tracing like you would with the brush or the pencil. You're clicking and then dragging to pull out these anchors to create the Bezier curve. But it's an essential tool to get to know, because you're going to use this tool in Illustrator. When you take Illustrator, you're going to use this tool in Animate and Muse and Premiere. So get used to it. You're going to use this tool all the time in multiple Adobe programs. So you would spend a little bit more time on this than I am right now. I'm just kind of doing this relatively quickly. But let's take a look at the finished project. So with your path, just like with the selection, you have to close the loop. And now after completely enclosing the path, you're going to go up to the top of the screen and click Make Selection. So already this is different than the other selection techniques that we've used. Before, we just made a selection and then could make the layer mask. Now, we have to trace that path and then go up to the top of the screen to click Make Selection. And then go to the bottom of the layer panel and click the layer mask icon. Now you'll notice I actually cut out what I had selected instead of the other way around. What I need to do is invert my mask now. And so this is another shortcut key that's going to be really, really important for you. Command-I, Command-I. So I've now inverted my layer mask, and now our mask is working the way that we wanted it to. So see now how the pen tool makes a much smoother edge than the quick selection tool. or the lasso tool or any of the other tools that we've used so far. So the pen tool is ideal for cutting things out that have really smooth curves. Okay, and the game that you can play that teaches you how to use the pen tool is called the Bezier game, and I'm gonna go on Google. I think I can just do Bezier. Yep, there it is. So here's the direct link to the Bezier game. And you click Get Started. And the first two levels show you how to use the pen tool. So you just click, 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 and that's how you make a straight edge with the pen tool. To make perfect diagonals, perfect verticals, and perfect horizontal lines, you hold down the Shift button. Pen tool, see how easy it is? Now, to make a curve, you click and drag to pull out these anchor points. Click and drag. Now, it gets a little bit more complicated for things like this. So if you want to bend the angle of your Bezier curve, what you do is, or your anchor point rather, you pull out the line, and then after you've pulled out the line, you hold down the Alter Option button and go like that. Now I've let go of my clicker, let go of my Alter Option button, click and drag. Now I'm holding down my Alter Option button again. Let go of my clicker, let go of my Alter Option button, and now click. And then you can get onto the hard stuff. So yeah, this is a good game to learn the Bezier game, and that will help you learn the pen tool, which is essential for a lot of the different Adobe programs. Okay, so that's the pen tool. Next is the quick selection tool, or the quick mask tool rather. And we need to revert back to our default foreground and background colors. So hit the letter D on your keyboard. So that now black is my foreground color, white is my background color. I'm gonna hit B for my brush tool, the letter B for brush. Up at the top of the screen, I'm gonna make sure that all of my settings are correct. So my opacity needs to be 100%, my flow needs to be 100%, and my blending mode needs to be on normal. Now I have a nice hard brush, and I have black as my foreground color. I can now hit Q on my keyboard. And actually my foreground and background colors switched for some reason, so I'm gonna hit X on my keyboard to make sure that black is my foreground color. And remember, B for brush, Q for quick mask. And now after I hit Q, and I'm not holding down Q, I just hit it once, I'm now painting in quick mask mode. And now what I can do is paint in the object that I want to select. So the quick mask tool is ideal for organically shaped objects or complex objects where you have to paint in the selection. And then if you make a mistake where you're like, uh-oh, I went too far outside my lines, you can hit the letter X on your keyboard, and that toggles your foreground and background colors. So now every time I paint with white, yep, I'll do it a second time, I can erase. Okay, so just like with the pen tool, there's going to be another step before we make the layer mask. So the next step after we painted in the object that we want to select is to hit the letter Q one more time. So B to start painting with the quick mask, Q to paint in quick mask mode, Q again to turn the quick mask into a selection. But you'll see, instead of actually selecting the leaf or the petal, I've selected everything except for the petal. So I need to invert my selection. So write this down, guys. The shortcut key to invert a selection is Shift-Command-I. Shift-Command-I to invert a selection. Shift-Command-I to invert a selection. And then you're going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel, and you're going to click on the square with a circle inside of it. And ta-da! That's how you make your layer mask. Let's do that again. Now write down all these steps for you guys. Control-click to delete layer mask. So I'm going to hit B for paintbrush. Step 1, hit B for paintbrush. Step 2, hit Q. Hit the letter Q on your keyboard to start painting in quick mask mode. Make sure black is your foreground color. So right now white is my foreground color. I need to hit X on my keyboard, and now black is my foreground color. Paint, 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 paint. Paint, 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 paint. I'm painting in my selection here. And now after I've completely painted in the selection, I'm going to go up to the top of the screen in Photoshop. I'm sorry, not on the top of the screen. I'm going to hit Q on my keyboard to turn that quick selection into a actual selection. And now I need to invert the selection. So the shortcut key to invert a selection is Shift-Command-I. Write that down, you guys. Shift-Command-I. And then I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click on the square with the circle inside of it. And now cut out that petal. Hold down the control button, click on the layer mask, and hit delete to get rid of it. Now, in addition to using the pen tool to make path or vector selections, you can also use the custom shape tool to make vector selections. So just like we learned in week 1, click the custom shape tool, and then up at the top of the screen, you have the 3 options: shape, path, and pixels. If I click path, I have access to the whole custom shape library now. So say I'll take this flower shape here. And now if I have path clicked, I'll be able to make a selection from this flower shape that I'm drawing from the custom shape library. So I've clicked and dragged at a diagonal angle, holding down the Shift button. I've drawn a path. And now I have to go up to the top of the screen and click the Make Selection button. Now to turn that selection into a layer mask, I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click on the square with a circle inside of it. And ta-da! That is how you can make a mask from the custom shape tool. Okay, now let's use these skills that we've learned to cut out our objects for our week 3 assignment. Command plus sign, command plus sign, command plus sign. It's always helpful to zoom in really, really close. And you guys, write down these steps in your notes so you can easily follow along. I have the prop selected in my layer panel, and I know it's selected because it's blue. This prop has straight edges, so it's going to be an ideal candidate for the polygon lasso tool. Now, when you're making a selection, it's always helpful to stay inside the subject rather than go outside the subject. So I'm going to start my line well inside the subject there, right? So it's okay that there's a few pixels on the outside. It's going to result in a cleaner looking cut. So see here how I'm tracing, but I'm remaining inside the object. And now I'm closing the loop. So now I've completely enclosed that prop in the selection. And now I'm going to go down to the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel. And ta-da! See now how I've cut that object out of its background? If I hit the letter V, I can move this around a little bit. And if I want to make it look like it's like in his little toe there, I can place it in his little hand. And I can click on the layer mask. And I know I've clicked on the layer mask because there's this white bracket around it. And I can get my brush tool out. I can hit X. And I can erase so it looks like his little toe is holding the stick. Right? See how it looks like it's in his little hand? Chelsea, I'll start from scratch. I did the background in the beginning. So I'll go over it again just for the students who've been watching the whole time. I don't want to bore them by doing it all again. So I will, I'll do it again towards the end. So now let's go to the hat. I'm going to click on the hat layer and make sure that it's selected. And I know it's selected because it's now the color blue in my layer panel. And this hat has smooth curves and straight lines. So I'm going to use the pen tool. So step one, after using the pen tool, I'm going to make sure the path option is selected up at the top of the screen. So I select the pen tool and then I make sure the path option is selected at the top of the screen. And I'm staying inside the object. Now I'm ready to make a curve. So I'm going to click and drag to pull out this Bezier curve. Click and drag. Click and drag. Click and drag. Click, 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 click. Click and drag. Click and drag. Now I've completely enclosed that hat with the path. So I'm going to go up to the top of the screen and click the Make Selection button. Now I've turned that hat into a selection. And now I'm going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click on the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel. Uh-oh, we've actually selected everything except for the hat. So we need to invert our mask now. And to invert the mask, you'll hit Command-I. Write this down, guys. Command-I to invert the mask. Now notice the hat is hovering slightly above the capybara's head. So I'm going to hit the letter V on my keyboard. Write this down, guys. The letter V equals the Move tool. The letter V is the shortcut key for the Move tool. So I'm going to click on the letter V, and I'm going to click on the hat and click and drag. And ta-da, now I've placed it on his head. If I want the hat to be slightly smaller or rotate it a little bit, I can hit Command T, write that down guys, Command T brings up the bounding box, which allows us to resize an object. So let's say I wanted to rotate the hat slightly. I can bring my cursor to the corner of this bounding box, and just hovering slightly beyond the corner of the bounding box, the arrow turns into a slight curving arrow, and then I can click and rotate like this. Now if I want to resize the hat, I can click on the corner, hold down the Shift button, and then click and drag, like so. And then, see, looks like I'm cutting off his neck a little bit. Right there looks good. Now I'm going to hit Enter or Return. Okay, so we are almost there. Now we just have to cut the little capybara out of his background. So first, in order to see the whole capybara picture a little bit better, I'm going to turn off the eyeball on each of these layers. And then I'm going to click on the animal layer. Zoom in nice and close. And the tool that will be ideal for cutting him out is the Quick Mask tool, which is the paintbrush. So I can hit B for paintbrush, and then I can hit Q for quick mask mode. And right now my paintbrush is a little bit on the small side, so I'm gonna hit the brackets next to the letter P to increase the size of my paintbrush. And it's best to start big and then work small. So I'm just gonna fill in this whole big area first, and then I'll go in and do the details towards the edges. Okay, so now I'm going to Command +. And we'll notice that our capybara is a little bit furry. So I'm going to ever so slightly reduce the hardness of my brush just to capture that slight furry quality. Zoom in really, really close. And now if you want to get that kind of the quality of the long hair, you can always use your smudge tool, which is this finger tool here. And you can smudge the edge of your quick mask into those little furs, and it helps to kind of capture that furry quality. So just something to try if you're interested. Okay, now that you completely painted in the capybara red, we're going to turn that quick mask into a selection by hitting the letter Q on your keyboard. Now notice we've actually selected everything except for the capybara. So we need to invert the selection. Write this down, guys. To invert the selection, you're going to hit Shift Command I. Shift Command I to invert the selection. Shift Command I to invert the selection. Next, I'm going to turn that selection into a quick mask by going to the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel. And ta-da! We have successfully cut him out of his background. Now we can turn the eyeball on the hat, and we can turn the eyeball on the prop. And the thing that's making it look not quite realistic, though, is the lighting. He doesn't have shadows underneath him, and the lighting on the subjects don't necessarily match the lighting on the background. So what we're going to do is put a little bit of a drop shadow underneath him. And definitely pay attention to this next part, you guys, and definitely follow along and write this in your notes. Any questions so far on anything that I've done? Okay, so to put a background, to put a shadow in the background, what we're going to do is click on the background layer. And we're going to hit Shift Command N to make a new layer. And see, now this layer 1 is above the background layer. Next, I'm going to go to the brush tool, and I'm going to use a very soft edge brush. So I'm going to bring the hardness down to 0. I'm going to increase the size of my brush just a little bit. And now watch this. With black, I'm going to paint. Now this does not look like a realistic shadow right now. And that's because the perspective is all wrong. So we're going to put the shadow into perspective by hitting Command T. Command T, write that down, guys. Command T brings up the transform controls. And now I'm going to squish, and I'm going to squish, squish, squish. And now that drop shadow is in a little bit more perspective. And I'm going to hit Enter or Return to place. And now the background, that shadow in the background there, it's a little bit too dark. So I'm going to just lighten that opacity by clicking on the opacity button over here in the tool, the layer panel. And I'm going to reduce the opacity just a little bit, just so it's a little nice subtle shadow there. Next, we're going to put a shadow on the capybara himself. So the light is coming from kind of above and behind. So mostly the shadow is going to be beneath him and towards us. So I'm going to click on the capybara layer, and then I'm going to hit Shift Command N to make a new layer. I'm going to make my brush nice and big. And I know I'm going to have a little drop shadow underneath the hat there. I am going to have under his chin, kind of towards us, down here, and here. And you'll notice that I'm completely covering up the capybara. And you might be thinking, what are you doing, Carly? This looks like a mess. It's not going to look like a mess in a second, okay? What we're going to do is we have to clip this shadow to the capybara using something called a clipping mask. And to do that, watch this, you guys. This is really important. Write this down. I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button. Option if you're on a Mac, Alt if you're on a PC. I'm going to bring my cursor, and I'm going to hover over the line Not clicking yet, just hovering over the line between layer 2 and the animal layer. Layer 2 is where I painted. The animal layer is right beneath it. So I'm holding down the Alt or Option button, and I'm hovering my cursor over the line between layer 2 and the animal layer. And now I'm gonna click once on my trackpad. And now I'm gonna let go of my Alt or Option button. And now I've clipped that shadow to that capybara, but it's still really, really dark. So I'm gonna go to the opacity up here, and I'm gonna lower the opacity. So now we have a nice little shadow that looks natural and not too overdone. Okay, and I can also place a little bit of shadow on the hat, and I can do that by making a new layer, Shift-Command-N. And now I'm going to hold down the Alt or Option button, click on the line between layer 3 and the hat layer, and watch, I'm going to paint. And so the painting is just going to stay on the hat. Now, I just want to lower the opacity by going to the opacity window here and just kind of lowering it. I think I just want like a little bit more shadow here on our capybara. We can do the same for the prop. Make a new layer, Shift-Command-N. You can just place a little bit of shadow on the front, hold down the Alt or Option button to clip, and then lower the opacity just a little bit. Now finally, we're going to put a vignette on this just like we did for our week 2 assessment. And the way that we make a vignette is by clicking on the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other, and clicking on gradient, not gradient map. Write this down in your notes. Write down the word gradient map and put an X through it, not gradient map. We're using gradient that's found underneath solid color. And we're going to select the black and white gradient. We're going to change the style from linear to radial. We're going to click reverse. We're going to increase the scale. So if you guys want, you can look at all my settings there. I have black and white gradient. I have radial for the style. I have my scale, you know, somewhere between 100 and 200. I have reverse checked, right? So this is what my gradient looks like. And now in order to be able to see my object and my subject through this gradient fill, I'm going to change the blending mode from normal to multiply. Does everyone see that? Write that down in your notes, guys. From the blending modes, so here's my layer panel. Here's the word normal, and I'm changing my blending mode from normal to multiply. Ta-da, and see what that did? It made the corners nice and dark. So it made a nice little vignette. And then I can put an overall color adjustment over the whole thing by going down to the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other at the bottom of the layer panel. And if you're writing your notes, you can just draw the little circle icon. And then you can click on, sorry, I ran out of room on my, on my trackpad there. Let me try that again. You can click on photo filter. And I'll choose, you can choose anything that you want from the photo filter. How about a little cooling filter? You can kind of increase the density a little bit. Ta-da! So by using a photo filter in conjunction with this shading and a little vignette, we've used blending modes and adjustment layers to get our lighting and our color to blend together so it all looks nice and natural. And you are going to save this and submit this as a Photoshop document. So to do that, you're going to go to File, Save As, go to our class, which is DES104. Underscore week 3 underscore your name dot PSD. Make sure layers is checked so you have all of your layers, and then hit save. Ta-da! So Chelsea wanted to see how I brought the pictures onto the background again. So I'm going to go through and do that. Chelsea, are you ready? I'm going to walk you through this now. So be prepared to write down notes. So we're going to go to File, New. Do you have that, Chelsea? File, New. And for the width, you're going to have 7 inches, not pixels, inches. 5 inches, not pixels, inches. Resolution 72. Now, you're going to place the background in there by going to File, Place Embedded, find your background, and then hit Place. Now, in order to resize the background so that it fits on your document and you don't get the white borders, you're going to hold down the Shift button. You got that, Chelsea? You're holding down the Shift button. And now you're clicking not on the edge, but the corner. Do you know what I mean by corner? So a corner is when the top of a picture and the edge of a picture come together. So a corner is that pointy part of a picture. Does that make sense, Chelsea? This part right here, see where my cursor is? The corner? Okay, you're gonna hold down the Shift button. Do you know what I mean by Shift button? Okay, good. And then you're gonna click on your trackpad on the corner, and you're gonna drag upward at a diagonal angle. Does that make sense? You see that? So while holding down the Shift button, you're clicking on your trackpad and you're dragging upward at a diagonal angle. And now you're gonna let go of your trackpad and you're gonna let go of your Shift button. Then you're gonna go down to the bottom corner. Again, in the top corner was when the top of the picture met the side of the picture, and the bottom corner is where the bottom of the picture meets the side of the picture. So, and again, just like the top corner, the bottom corner is pointy. So it's that pointy edge right there on the edge of the picture. And you're gonna hold down the Shift button, and you're gonna click on your trackpad on the corner, and you're gonna drag downward at a diagonal angle while holding down the Shift button at the same time. And then you're gonna let go of your trackpad, and you're gonna let go of your Shift button. And then once you've resized the background to fit, you're gonna go up to the top of the screen and make sure the W number, which is 32.68, is the exact same as the height number, which is 32.68. And if those numbers are different, you wanna change them so they're exactly the same. And then you're gonna hit Enter or Return on your keyboard. You got that? Was anything confusing about that? Okay, good. Now, do you want to know how to bring in the other parts of the picture? Okay, so to bring in the animal, you're going to go to File, Place Embedded, and then you're going to browse to your animal, and then hit Place. Now we're going to shrink him down, and we're going to do it the opposite that we did for the background. So just like we did with the background, we're going to click on the corner, and this time I'm clicking where this edge here meets the bottom of the picture, and I'm holding down the Shift button, and I'm clicking and dragging to shrink him down. And I'm going to do the same thing for the top corner. I'm going to hold down the Shift button, click and drag to shrink him down. Now I'm gonna click somewhere on him and move him around, not the center, but off to the side slightly. And then when I have him placed where I want him to be placed, I'm gonna hit enter or return. Now right now we're zoomed out pretty far, so it's gonna be easier for us to zoom in. So write this down. To zoom in, you hit Command plus sign. Command plus sign to zoom in. Now, do you want me to bring in the other objects as well? Okay, so now I'm gonna go to File, Place Embedded, and I'm gonna click on the hat layer, and I'm gonna hit Place. Now watch me resize this. Okay, where am I gonna click, Chelsea? Am I gonna click on the edge, or am I gonna click on the corner? What do you think? Okay, corner, good. And what other button I'm gonna hold down while I'm clicking on the corner? I'm gonna hold down the shift button, right? So I'm gonna hold down the shift button and I'm gonna click on the corner and I'm gonna drag at a diagonal angle to shrink this hat down. And now I can click and move this hat over the picture by clicking anywhere on the hat layer except for the center. I'm not gonna click on the center, I'm gonna click off to the side. Hold down the shift button. I'm gonna place it on his head. And now when I'm done resizing it and I'm done moving it around, I can hit enter or return. Now I'm going to place the prop. So I'm going to go to File, Place Embedded. I'm going to click on the prop, and then I'm going to hit Place. But see how the prop is facing the wrong direction? Do you want me to show you how to flip it around? Okay, to flip this, you're gonna go to Edit. Well, if you wanna flip it, you're gonna go to Edit, Transform, Flip Horizontal. Then you're gonna hold down the Shift button, click and drag to shrink it down, place it, and then hit Enter or Return. Got it? Is there anything else you want me to show you how to do?
I talk faster than I text. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, what was that?
I said I talk faster than I can text you.
You texted me?
No, I said I talk quicker than I can text you. That's why I put it on my phone.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see. And what's your question?
Okay, how do I, like, can you show me how to do a picture of how do I include it into the background again?
Okay, you go to File, Place Embedded.
No, like when we take the like the animal, the hat, and the wand out of their own picture.
Okay, so there's going to be several different techniques. On this one, I used the Quick Mask tool.
Okay.
On this one, I used the Pen tool. And on this one, I used the Polygon Lasso tool.
Okay.
So the way that you do it is whatever technique you're going to choose, you have to select the layer first, then select, I'm going to use the Polygon Lasso tool, and I'm going to click and make that selection. And then after I've completely enclosed that selection around that object, then I'm going to click on the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel. Do you got that?
Yes, ma'am.
Cool, there you go. And so then for the hat, I'll just use the pen tool and You have to trace the object with the pen tool. And then after you have drawn that path around that object, with the pen tool, you're going to have to click the Make Selection button after the path is made. And that's up here, the Make Selection button. And then after that selection is made, you're going to go down to the bottom of the layer panel and click on the square with the circle inside of it. And now to invert the selection, you hit Command-I.
Command-I.
And I missed a little part here, so you can always clean up your edges by using the brush tool and make sure that your layer mask is selected. And then you can just, oops, I need to use a harder edge.
Oh yeah, I see.
And you can just fix that there. So every time you paint with black, you're erasing. And every time you paint with white, you're leaving it there.
Okay.
And then with the animal, you want to use a quick mask because it's easier. So you're going to hit the brush tool.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to hit the letter Q on your keyboard.
And Q does what? Oh,
it starts painting in the quick mask mode.
Yeah, hit Q to paint and hit B for paintbrush.
Yep.
Okay.
So you'll go around and you'll paint the object with the quick mask. And then after you've painted it with the quick mask, you're going to hit Q again. And that's going to turn the quick mask into a selection. And then from there, you can click the Add a Layer Mask icon.
So after I finish doing my polygonal tool, what I do, every time I finish doing that, I just press enter and it should do it.
No. You press the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yep, no problem.
I did it. Oh my God.
Yeah, it's super easy.
Yeah, it is. It really is once you get the hang of it.
Yeah, no, it's totally easy.
And you said, how do I clean up?
You just hit your paintbrush. You make sure that the layer mask is selected and then use paint with black.
Okay.
Okay, so now I'll hit Q. Now I'm going to hit the square with the circle inside of it at the bottom of the layer panel. Now to invert it, you just hit Command-I.
Okay.
Any other questions?
No, ma'am, that's it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so let's go over what we have covered and then we'll call it good. So we've covered using the marquee tools. The lasso tool is the quick selection tool. The pen tool, we've used the shape tools, the quick mask, and we didn't use the color range selector or the channel pull. You'll save that for future classes. And we use the clipping mask. And the clipping mask is a great way to apply your shading directly to one object. One thing I didn't show you guys how to do is how to change the color of something using the clipping mask. And that's something that's really handy. So let's bring up all of our layers again. So let's say I wanted to make that hat green, okay? What I do is I click on the hat layer. We'll pretend that the shading's not there yet. Click on the hat layer, and I'm going to click on the circle that's light on one side, dark on the other. I'll click on Hue Saturation, click Colorize, and make it green. So the reason right now that it's working is because there is a clipping mask. You can see that little downward facing arrow there. If, however, there wasn't a clipping mask, everything underneath the hue saturation layer would be green. So the way that you make a clipping mask is you hold down the Alt or Option button, hold down the Alter Option button, and then click on the line between hue saturation and the layer that's directly beneath it. And then it clips that hue saturation layer to the layer directly beneath it, and you can change the color of just one object. You can use a clipping mask for a whole bunch of really useful things. For instance, let's say you want to put a picture inside of text. So you have this picture and you have some text. Picture. You can hold down the Alter Option button and then click on the line between the flower picture and the text that says flower. And ta-da! Now you've used the clipping mask to clip that photo inside your text. So I want to check in with you guys. After painting a quick mask in quick mask mode, how do you turn it into a selection? How do you turn a quick mask into a selection? Remember, quick mask was that transparent red color that I painted. Yep, perfect. You hit Q on your keyboard. Now, after making a path with the pen tool, how do you turn that path into a selection? Not B. B is the brush tool. Not Q. Q is the quick mask. To turn, look at your notes, Chelsea. After making a path with the pen tool, Shift-I inverts. And actually, Shift-I doesn't do anything. Shift-Command-I inverts. After making a path with the pen tool, you click the Make Selection button at the top of the screen. Click the Make Selection button up at the top of the screen. Okay, write that down if it's not in your notes. To turn a path into a selection, you have to click the Make Selection button at the top of your screen. Now, when making a path or a custom shape, there are 3 options available at the menu at the top of your screen. We learned this in week 1. What are those 3 options in the menu at the top of your screen when you're making a shape? They are and One starts with S, and the other 2 starts with P. Shape, path, and pixels. Good. And what is this? What does this icon do? Nope, not gradient. This is the adjustment layers. This is the adjustment layers. And where is this found? This is found at the bottom of the layers panel. So this is a common mistake that leads to students losing points on their assignment. What is wrong with the second box on this picture? Yep, it's been squished while resizing. So what can you do to avoid this type of mistake? Yep, hold down the Shift button as you resize. So just a reminder for your week 3 discussion, you're talking about working non-destructively, which means making each change on separate layers so that you can easily make changes to your project as your clients require them. And when you work non-destructively, you're able to make changes immediately rather than having to start the whole project all over again. So if you have a lot of layers in your project, chances are that means you're working non-destructively. If you're using adjustment layers, separately from your layers, that means you're probably working non-destructively. If you're using layer masks instead of erasing and merging, that means you're probably working non-destructively. If you're using smart objects and smart filters, and all of your changes are going on separate layers, you are probably working non-destructively. So you need to have an adjustment layer used on this project and a blending mode used on this project. And you need to use adjustment layers and blending modes in order to make the lighting and the coloring on your subjects match so they all look like they blend together. So here are just some examples of adjustment layers and blending modes that you'll want to consider using for your project this week. If you want to see more in-depth analysis on adjustment layers and blending modes and what they do, definitely refer to my pre-recorded class session at the beginning of week 3, where I go and I demonstrate what each of these adjustment layers do and what each of these blending modes do. Please, please do remember to back up your native files. This means those .psd files that you've been making in this class. And I know that for your assignment submissions, most of the time you're turning in JPEGs, but you want to back up and save those native files because eventually you're going to take a capstone class. And that capstone class is where you're going to take all of your past class assignments and make them as good as they can be and revise them, and then put them in your portfolio so that you can hopefully get a job. And if you get a job, that means you can pay off your student loans and you can put your degree to use. If you don't get a job, that means you're going to owe hundreds of dollars each month in student loans, and you won't be able to pay them off. You'll feel like your degree has gone for all this time and all this money for nothing. So it's really, really important that you back up your PSD files so that you have all of your class assignments, and that when you take your capstone class, you're able to make revisions to your project so that they can be as good as they can be. And then by the end, you'll be able to have an awesome portfolio, and then you'll be able to graduate school and get a job right away and be able to pay off your student loans. No portfolio, no job. So that's why it's really important to back up your work, back up your work. And that means not just saving it on your laptop, but saving it on an external hard drive or uploading it to something like Google Drive or the cloud somewhere. So a few refreshers from week 2. Does anyone remember from week 2, what's an adjustment layer that we can use to adjust the lightness or darkness of an image? There are several, but specifically last week in week 2, I used an adjustment layer called, it started with an L. Levels. So levels is a great adjustment layer to adjust the lightness or darkness of an image. And then do you guys remember from week 2, what adjustment layer did I use to remove the excess yellow from the image? The word color was in the name of that adjustment layer. Color balance. Yep, color balance. And then what color did I add to get rid of that excess yellow? Remember, there was a slider that said yellow, and on that same slider, there was another color, and I had to add more of that color to get rid of the yellow. And that was blue. So I added blue to get rid of yellow. And that was our week 2 assignment. I added blue to get rid of yellow. And what's a way to adjust one part of an image without affecting the other parts of the image? layer. How about a selection? So a selection allows you to adjust one part of an image without affecting the other parts of an image. Also, clipping mask would be appropriate. So if I have an object and I think the quick mask tool is the tool I want to use, what type of object would be appropriate for the quick mask tool? An object that has irregular bumpy edges, an object that has smooth curves and straight lines, or an object that has straight lines only? Quick mask tool. So think the quick mask tool is the one you paint, and you're using your finger to paint in your selection. And think about how hard it is to make straight lines with your finger on the trackpad, and think about how hard it is to make smooth curves on with your finger. So chances are, yep, the type of object that would be good for a quick mask tool has irregular bumpy edges. Now, what type of object would be good for a pen tool selection? Irregular bumpy edges, smooth curves and straight lines, or straight lines only? Smooth curves and straight lines, perfect. And what type of object would be good for the polygon lasso tool? Irregular bumpy edges, smooth curves and straight lines, or straight lines only? Think polygon lasso tool. Straight lines only, very good. And what's the process for making the quick mask selection? I'll give you a hint. First step is use the brush tool. So hit B for brush. What do you do after you hit B for brush? You hit Q for quick mask, right? Q for quick mask. And then you paint in your quick mask. And then you hit Q to turn that quick mask into a selection. Any questions on anything that I've gone over? You guys ready to do your assignments this week? Ready to finish up the class with an A? Awesome. Well, I thought I'd kind of wrap things up with talking a little bit about getting a job, right? And I have a really great little video on getting your first job. At least I thought I did. And you know what? I might have to show it to you next class, honestly, because it's not pulling up here. So I'll talk to you guys next class about getting your first job. And what I'll do now instead, since that little video is not showing up, I'll open up the rest of the class to questions if you have any questions, or if you want some one-on-one help during this last 10 minutes, feel free to stick around and I'd love to give you some one-on-one help. If you're good, if you know what you need to do, you are welcome to head on out. Oh, and Chelsea asked the width and the height for the project. Yes, it needs to be in inches. 5 inches by 7 inches. Have a good evening, Noel. Anyone have any questions? Any questions at all? Okay, remember, I'm going to have my multi-session on Tuesday and Wednesday. So if you guys have any questions or need help with anything, feel free to drop by. And I'm happy to give you any one-on-one help that you might need. Oh, sure, Chelsea. I'd love to help you with that. Do you want to share your screen and I'll show you how to check your size of your object, or of your canvas, rather? If you just hit share screen, that way I can walk you through. Or I can just show you on my screen too. So to check your size of your canvas, you go up to image, image size. And right now we're viewing it in pixels. So you just change pixels to inches and you'll see what the inches are. And it should be 7 inches by 5 inches, 72 resolution. And if it's not, you need to then make a new canvas by going to File, New, changing the width to 7 inches by 5 inches, 72 resolution, and then clicking OK. And then start over. Any other questions, anyone?